Shalom. I'd like to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Haraka Kodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and safety to the Akim, preaching this truth across the four corners of the earth. Right, this video is a continuation of, it's a part 2 of a video called Rich and Poor, Free and Bond. And basically I was going into who are the rich and who are the poor. In this video, I'd like to continue to touch on some of the conditions of the poor, which is on this side in this kingdom, basically the Israelites, that is the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. So how a lot of people in Trinidad and in other parts of the Caribbean survive. I know in Trinidad, in certain parts of Trinidad, a lot of people survive from family that's in the US that work over there, and they send back money via Western Union or whatnot, and they send barrels by ship with stuff like clothes and shoes and little food items and things. I saw it many times. I know that's how they live. Trinidad, I heard this is the same thing in Jamaica. I saw an interesting video the other day on social media where the snowstorm took place, and the snowbomb they call it. And this woman, you can clearly hear a Jamaican accent, and she had some age, you know. She's reminding her family in the States, back home in Jamaica, to ease her up, because this is what she had to go through. She reminded them and she letting them know this is what she has to go through to work to send money for them. I mean, we're going back to the pride again. A lot of them just be in the States working hard. And if you look at this video, look at the age of this woman. This is not no young woman, you know. Many times you see them, they spend that money before time, or they use up the goods carelessly, and in no time ordering back to the States. So I understand this video very well. She's letting them know the value. She's letting them know the value of her labor.
Yeah, see where true me if I go through. You see all this? Watch out. Me can't even stand up in the snow. Me don't know where to walk. Me don't know where to turn. Jesus Christ of Nazareth, Jamaica people, every minute you don't want phone. You don't have a problem with phone, and I'm glad about this, you know. See, this America people have to go through for go to work. Me can't see where me I go look at my face. Me can't see where me I go. Me have to look at vehicle come rip me down. And every minute you don't want big phone. You don't want money. You don't want Nike. You don't want Adidas. You don't want Flipper Dipper. In the name of Jesus, and this we have to go through. We send something come go now. Only for grateful. Help me now. We have snow. This is a snowstorm. Jamaica people, we need help in America. Come help go through the storm. Yeah. If you know, say, we don't have it like that. We have to pay our bills. We have to buy food. We have to wear boots. See there? See there? The car literally hiding in the snow. Jamaica people, come together and stop beg we. Make we go no when we want go no. Make we go no when we have it. Because it not pretty. It not pretty at all.
All these nations, really and truly, they're living deliciously off of America, and the Israelites just barely living off of America. It happens in the Caribbean. The Mexicans do the same thing. A lot of nations survive off of America's wealth, right? But that Revelation 18 and 11, right? The merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buy their merchandise anymore. Right, so the time coming soon when the grinding will cease. Well, it's already here. The grinding already ceasing, and all throughout the world, they will start to feel the effects of it. Right, so it's not no room to be proud anymore. It's not no room to be proud anymore. That's when Isaiah 4:1 will kick in.
As the countdown begins to the Trump presidency in the US, anxiety's building in neighboring Mexico as people there wait to see how their lives might change. The president-elect has promised to crack down on undocumented workers and build a border wall with Mexico. And there's also the threat of a ban on Mexicans in the US sending money home. In Hidalgo state in Mexico, this mother of a migrant in Florida says, if we have to survive alone, there's almost no money here, hardly anything, hardly any work. So if they send our immigrants back here, there'll be more poverty, because over there they have work, they help us, they send us a little bit. It's estimated migrants in the US sent the equivalent of 26 billion euros to Mexico last year, a record figure. And there was a big increase in the amount sent in the past few months in anticipation of a possible transfer ban. This money transfer worker in Florida says the majority know that at any moment there could be a law that stops them from being here, and they'll have to go home. Not only Mexico, there are people from Salvador, Honduras and other countries. Everyone is almost in the same situation, but it's worse for Mexicans because there are many more. Money transfers into Mexico represent a large part of the economy, much more than its earnings for oil exports or manufactured goods, for example.
This is Psalm 37:1. Fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity. For they shall soon be cut down like the grass, and wither as the green herb. Right, so that's referring to Israel, basically. Don't be envious of what Esau has, because he will be cut down like the grass, right, soon. In a dread manner. So yeah, and this is something I felt I need to touch on, because there's a prevailing thought that certain people who live in a certain area, what they might call a ghetto area, you know, they seem to think that automatically their suffering is greater, their oppression is greater, so, and that automatically makes them morally superior and spiritually elevated above everybody. As a culture, they seem to have their own righteousness. You know, is this prevailing idea that that separation. But you know, they don't understand that when Yahweh Hashem Yoshai coming back, right? When Yahweh Shai coming and when he bursts those clouds, he not looking for somebody from a particular area, a particular with particular ideals, or you know, if you listen to conscious music alone, you know, he not looking for that. That's not what it's about, right? Right now the gates are open for you to turn back to Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, right, and come back to his righteousness, right, to the law, statutes, and commandments, and to try and make yourself worthy, right? Try and put on those garments, those clean garments, right? So it's just an idea I always find very, very strange and prevalent, that you know, a certain group believe because they come from a certain area that, you know, that automatically makes them superior by means of the oppression, you know. But oppression in these times is across the board, right? So I mean, people who have might work for the government or something like that, they have their hardships to go through. I'll highlight one of the biggest hardships that they have to go through, and the funny thing, you don't hear them complaining in the news, as that woman would come up in the news, and you know, she well, I mean, true, she went through some tragedy. I think she lost a child or whatever, but she you don't hear the average person, working person coming up in the news and crying their problems like that. They don't have a house. They understand, somehow they seem to understand they had to work fair. But we have something going on in the economy for a good while now, and that is well, in economies across the world too, because it's not just this country, but and that is where the gap between the rich and the poor is widening, and there's an erosion of the middle class, right? The middle class bordering on poor for a long time now, right? But you don't seem to see them complaining on the news so much, right? But some of the things they had to go through, right? When they had to work night, a job where you working night and lose sleep, that is a real detriment to your body, to your organs and everything, especially if you're doing it for a long time, right? I'll show you in this video.
My name is Matthew Walker. I am a professor of neuroscience and psychology at the University of California, Berkeley, and I am the author of the book, Why We Sleep. We certainly know that a lack of sleep will actually prevent your brain from being able to initially make new memories. So it's almost as though without sleep, the memory inbox of the brain shuts down and you can't commit new experiences to memory. So those new incoming informational emails are just bounced and you end up feeling as though you're amnesic. You can't essentially make and create those new memories. We also know that a lack of sleep will lead to an increased development of a toxic protein in the brain that is called beta amyloid, and that is associated with Alzheimer's disease, because it is during deep sleep at night when a sewage system within the brain actually kicks into high gear and it starts to wash away this toxic protein, beta amyloid. So if you're not getting enough sleep each and every night, more of that Alzheimer's related protein will build up. The more protein that builds up, the greater your risk of going on to develop dementia in later life. What are the effects of sleep deprivation on the body? Well, there are many different effects. Firstly, we know that sleep deprivation affects the reproductive system. We know that men who are sleeping just 5 to 6 hours a night have a level of testosterone which is that of someone 10 years their senior. So a lack of sleep will age you by almost a decade in terms of that aspect of virility and wellness. We also know that a lack of sleep impacts your immune system. So after just one night of 4 to 5 hours of sleep, there is a 70% reduction in critical anti-cancer fighting immune cells called natural killer cells. And that's the reason that we know that short sleep duration predicts your risk for developing numerous forms of cancer. And that list currently includes cancer of the bowel, cancer of the prostate, as well as cancer of the breast. In fact, the link between a lack of sleep and cancer is now so strong that recently the World Health Organization decided to classify any form of nighttime shift work as a probable carcinogen. So in other words, jobs that may induce cancer because of a disruption of your sleep-wake rhythms. We also know that a lack of sleep impacts your cardiovascular system, because it is during deep sleep at night that you receive this most wonderful form of effectively blood pressure medication. Your heart rate drops, your blood pressure goes down. If you're not getting sufficient sleep, you're not getting that reboot of the cardiovascular system. So your blood pressure rises. You have, if you're getting 6 hours of sleep or less, a 200% increased risk of having a fatal heart attack or a stroke in your lifetime. There is a global experiment that is performed on 1.6 billion people twice a year, and it's called daylight savings time. And we know that in the spring, when we lose 1 hour of sleep, we see a subsequent 24% increase in heart attacks the following day. Another question perhaps is, what is the recycle rate of a human being? How long can we actually last without sleep before we start to see declines in your brain function or even impairments within your body? And the answer seems to be about 16 hours of wakefulness. Once you get past 16 hours of being awake, that's when we start to see mental deterioration and physiological deterioration in the body. We know that after you've been awake for 19 or 20 hours, your mental capacity is so impaired that you would be as deficient as someone who is legally drunk behind the wheel of a car. So if you were to ask me what is the recycle rate of a human being, it does seem to be about 16 hours, and we need about 8 hours of sleep to repair the damage of wakefulness. Wakefulness essentially is low-level brain damage.
Right, so this is 2 Esdras 15:1. Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, said the Lord, said Yahweh. Right, and that is what we that's what the Most High call his prophets to do in this last time, to go out of the gates of the city and preach the words of prophecy in the ears of the people. Now it's not spoken to a particular group or a particular area, right? That's why you go to the gates of the city, so you could cast your net, right, as the fish is flowing through, right? And scripture say, my sheep will hear my voice. On the topic of the eroding middle class now, right? The years ago, even in Trinidad, we had a more prosperous middle class, right? But that has really that gone on the drain, more or less, right? The middle class in this country and other parts of the world, the middle class struggling. I think I heard in another video, Chicago video, he was saying that 45 million Americans living below the poverty line, right? 45 million, that is about 1/7 of the population, 1/6, 1/7, somewhere about there. So is and those people, I think he said, earning between 7,000 27,000. somewhere around there, 12,000 to 27,000, somewhere around there a year. So so these are working people, right? They're working, but yet still they're living below the poverty line, right? So that is really and truly a setup by ESO to make the implementation of the chip a lot easier, because when the middle class realize that they're working, they're looking at what they're going through on a daily basis, right? And certain sectors of the society seem to believe that they're superior by virtue of where they live, right? When this trip is when the economy finally crash and this trip is implemented, right, it most likely might come across as it might be promoted as something I'm going to show you in this video here as the universal basic income. Initially, right, it might be promoted as a universal, more or less, income for everybody. So you could you could get your chip, you sort of bring it across nice. You get your chip, you flash your right hand at some warehouse, and you go with your packages of food items, whatever. So really in that time, it will have no difference between who middle class, who poor, who upper, everybody poor. That's what it comes down to. And I'll go further to say that those who working for the government, and those who working for jobs that it offer you the ability to at least pay your rent, barely pay your rent, that will make absolutely no difference in that time. And even those people are very even those people, save the elect, are going to take the chip, right? Because in the case of an economy crashing, from the time a society goes without food and water, it's total chaos. And all these people who do all these jobs and all these services will be totally overwhelmed and will be willing to take any way out, right? And if they're taking the way out now, which is Yahweh Bashem Shai, right, they will fall into the hands of Esau.
What if the state covered your cost of living? Would you still go to work? Go back to school? Not work at all? What would you do? This concept is called a Universal Basic Income, or UBI, and it's nothing less than the most ambitious social policy of our times. In 2017, basic income is gaining momentum around the world. First trials are ongoing or on their way, and a growing number of countries are considering UBI as an alternative to welfare. How would it work, and what are the key arguments for and against? Right now, people can't really agree what universal basic income is or should be. Some want to use it to eliminate welfare and cut bureaucracy. Others want it as a free extra for existing programs, or even want it to be so high that work itself becomes optional. For this video, we'll talk mostly about the minimum basic income, enough money to be above the poverty line. In the US, this means about $1,000 a month or $12,000 a year. The money would not be taxed, and you could do whatever you wanted with it. In this scenario, UBI is a way of transferring the wealth of a society while still keeping the free market intact. But if we hand out free money, will people just spend it on booze and stop working? A 2013 study by the World Bank specifically examined if poor people waste their handouts on tobacco and alcohol if they receive it in the form of cash. The clear answer: no, they don't. The opposite is true. Other studies have shown that the richer you are, the more drugs and alcohol you consume. The lazy and drunk poor person is a stereotype rather than reality. What about laziness? Universal basic income test runs done in Canada in the 1970s showed that around 1% of the recipients stopped working, mostly to take care of their kids. On average, people reduced their working hours by less than 10%. The extra time was used to achieve goals like going back to school or looking for better jobs. But if laziness and drugs are not a huge deal, why doesn't our current welfare state solve poverty? Welfare or unemployment programs often come with a lot of strings attached, like taking part in courses, applying to a certain number of jobs a month, or accepting any kind of job offer, no matter if it's a good fit or what it pays. Besides the loss of personal freedom, these conditions are often a huge waste of time and only serve to make the unemployment statistics seem less bad. Often your time would be much better spent looking for the right job, continuing education, or starting a business. Another unwanted side effect of many welfare programs is that they trap people in poverty and promote passive behavior. Imagine a benefit of $1,000 each month. In a lot of programs, if you earn a single dollar extra, the whole thing is taken away. If you take a job that's paying $1,200, you might not only lose your benefits, but because of your taxes and other costs like transportation, you might end up having less money than before. So if you actively try to better your situation and your total income is not improving or even shrinking, welfare can create a ceiling that traps people in poverty and rewards passive behavior. A basic income can never be cut, and therefore getting a job and additional income will always make your financial situation better. Work is always rewarded. Instead of a ceiling, it creates a floor from which people can lift themselves up. But even if UBI is the better model, is it economically feasible? What about inflation? Won't prices just rise, making everything just like it was before? Since the money is not being created by magic or printers, it needs to be transferred from somewhere. It's more of a shift of funds than the creation of new ones. Hence, no inflation. Okay, but how do we pay for it? There's no right answer here because the world is too diverse. How well off a country is, what the local values are. Are things like high taxes or cutting the defense budget politically acceptable or not? How much welfare state is already in place, and is it effective? Each country has its own individual path to a UBI. The easiest way to pay for a UBI is to end all welfare and use the free funds to finance it. Not only would this make a number of government agencies disappear, which in itself saves money, it would also eliminate a lot of bureaucracy. On the other hand, cutting them could leave many people worse off than before. If the goal is to have a foundation for everybody, there still need to be programs of some sort because just like countries, people are not the same. The second way, higher taxes, especially for the very wealthy. In the US, for example, there's been a lot of economic growth, but most of the benefits from it have gone to the richest few percent. The wealth gap is rapidly widening, and many argue that it might be time to distribute the spoils more evenly to preserve the social peace. There could be taxes on financial transactions, capital, land value, carbon, or even robots. But UBI is not necessarily expensive. According to a recent study, a UBI of $1,000 per month in the US could actually grow the GDP by 12% over 8 years because it would enable poor people to spend more and increase overall demand. What about the people who do the dirty work? Who will work in the fields, crawl through sewers, or lift pianos? If you don't need to for survival, will people still do hard, boring, and unfulfilling labor? UBI might give them enough leverage to demand better pay and working conditions. A study calculated that every extra dollar going to wage earners would add about $1.21 to the national economy, while every extra dollar going to high-income Americans would add only 39 cents. There would still be very rich and poor people, but we could eliminate fear, suffering, and existential panic for a significant part of the population. making poor citizens better off could be a smart economic tactic. For some, this isn't enough. They want a UBI large enough to live a middle-class existence. If we set the financial obstacle aside, this idea fundamentally challenges how our society is constructed. By earning money, you earn the possibility to take part in society. This determines your status and options, but it also forces many people into spending huge chunks of their time on things they don't care about. In 2016, only 33% of US employees were engaged at work, 16% were actively miserable, and the remaining 51% were only physically present. Would 67% of people stop working if they could? It would be unfair to portray work as just a chore. Work gives us something to do. It challenges us. It motivates us to improve. It forces us to engage. Many find friends or partners at work. We work for social status, wealth, and our place in the world. We're looking for something to do with our lives. And for many people, work gives them meaning. There are other concerns with UBI. If all welfare programs were exchanged for one single payment, this gives the government a lot of leverage. Individual programs are easier to attack or cut than a multitude. Or populists might promise drastic changes to the UBI to get into power. And a universal basic income doesn't tackle all problems when it comes to inequality. Rents, for example. While $1,000 might be great in the countryside, it's not a lot for expensive metropolitan areas, which could lead to poor people moving outwards and the difference between rich and poor becoming even more extreme. And of course, for some people, the concept of work itself not being essential for survival is appalling. So is the universal basic income a good idea? The honest answer is that we don't know yet. There needs to be a lot more research, more and bigger test runs. We need to think about what kind of UBI we want and what we're prepared to give up to pay for it. The potential is huge. It might be the most promising model to sustainably eliminate poverty. It might seriously reduce the amount of desperation in the world and make us all much less stressed out.
So even your firefighters and your nurses and your ambulance and your police and even all of those, right, at that time will everything will be an even feel. It'll be an even feel at that time, because everybody will have, they will have nothing to eat. They will have nothing in the stores, right? They mightn't have gas to pump at that time. So, right. So let me read Ecclesiastes 12:3. In that day, when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease, because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened. Right? So I'll show you this little clip to show you how the services will be overwhelmed. Right? So that'll really be opening the door for all the services that even the people that like to call themselves, ghetto, they're proud, they're proud to be from the ghetto. Even they and all depend on these services, right? At that point, at that time, those services won't be available again, right? And even those service people would be taking the chip, right?
Away! Wait!
These are refugees and immigrants, right? Dreamers.
Wait!
Sounds like someone's laughing. Could be wrong. Well, yeah, she got a pretty good beating. Horrifying incident. There we go again.
So, yeah, with that, I'd like to say all praises to Yahweh Bashem Yoshai, double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and safety to the Aki and preaching this truth across the four corners of the earth. Shalom.